Do you ever feel like your Excel reports are just collecting digital dust? Well, let's change that. In this video, I'm revealing 3 surefire tips to transform your data analysis from boring to brilliant. Get ready to wow your audience and, most importantly, impress your boss. All of the data in the world won't help your financial presentations if no one is paying attention. It's up to you to draw out insights and make everything visually appealing, even if you're just sharing spreadsheets. I'm going to show you 3 easy ways to do this in Excel with conditional formatting, pivot tables, and automated charts. Make sure to stick around to the end for my bonus tip that will wow everyone around you. And while you're watching, scroll down to the description and click that link to join my newsletter. I'll send you my free guide to 25 ways to use AI in finance and accounting, one of which is creating the same kind of visuals that we're going to talk about right now. So with that, let's get started. We're going to flip over to this Excel workbook that I have. We're going to go through 3 tips as well as my secret bonus tip. First, I want to introduce you to the data set. This is a raw data set that I found online. There's a lot of different data sets that you can find for data analysis, data science practice. Really good thing to check out. So this is a data set of sales. You'll see that we're selling cars. We've got motorcycles, classic cars, and we're selling them across all kinds of different cities, countries, regions. And of course, we have the contacts here. So we're going to use this data to work through. Starting with tip number 1, so I've built a chart that's analyzing the sum of the sales prices across each country across time. So 2003, 2004, 2005. We're going to use this data set like this for tip 1 and tip 3. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add in some variances. So how did we perform year over year? So this is going to be 03 versus 04. This will be 04 versus 05. We'll bold that and make it pretty. And here we go. Equals new minus old. And equals new minus old. So a little bit of a decline in Australia. We'll carry that down. Okay. I always like to make things pretty. We like to format as we go. That's really important to keeping our books looking nice. We'll do brackets. And we'll widen it a bit just to make sure that everything is good to go. Now that we've got our variances, we're going to put together our conditional formatting. Conditional formatting is found up here on the Home tab. There's all kinds of different options. So we have some automated ones where we can highlight cells based on certain conditions. We can look at top, bottom, if things are over average or below average. And if you want to get really fancy, you can put in gradients, scales, icon sets, and things like that. And of course, you can even just write your own conditional formats if you're feeling even fancier than fancy. So for right now, we're just going to use the automated ones. We're going to use the highlight cell rules, greater than, less than. What we want to do is highlight what's green and what's red. So we're going to highlight the cells that we want to do conditional formatting on. We're going to say if it is greater than 0, we want to do green fill. And then we'll go back. We'll say if it's less than 0, we want it to be red. So that's great. We see now clearly what is good, what is bad, but that is a lot to look at. That is a lot of red and green. So let's go back. We're going to manage this and we're going to adjust slightly so we don't have quite so much to look at. So we'll start on the first one. We'll say if the cell value, let's say it's less than 2,000, we don't necessarily want to highlight everything. Okay, and then we'll do the exact same thing here because you don't want to overwhelm everybody. We'll pop in greater than 2,000 here. Hit apply. Boom. Well, now even more is red. That's where we have to remember to put in negative signs for our downside case. So we'll put in equals negative 2,000 and we'll apply. There we go. Now it's a little bit less to look at. It's really clear where our big problems are. Looks like we're having a rough transition from 04 to 05. Norway's kind of in continuous decline. Australia's in decline, but there's a few bright spots. You see Finland popped up. Austria popped up a little bit, but overall a little bit of a rough transition from 2004 to 2005. I'll show you one other thing here. So in addition to over, under, we can also go and say, okay, what is our top 10%? We're going to say the top 10% is green. And we're going to go back and say, okay, well, what's our bottom 10%? Where do we really have to be concerned? We're going to call those red. And then we're going to go back and we'll delete our old rules. Delete and delete. So now we can see what we need to be most concerned about. We need to be most concerned about declines in France, the UK, and the US. And in the prior year, we had the biggest strength in France, Japan, and the US. So that's conditional formatting. With that, we're going to move over to tip number 2, which is pivot tables. Pivot tables are an extremely powerful tool. It allows you to take rows and rows of raw data and automatically sort and calculate instead of doing all that work manually. To use a pivot table, you want to go to your data set and highlight the entire data set. There's a really fast way to highlight a large piece of data. You want to hold down the control button, the shift button, and then use the arrow key. So I'm holding control and shift. We're going to arrow all the way to the right. You'll see that it goes to the end of the data, and then arrow down, and I've selected everything very quickly. From there, we're going to go to the Insert tab, and pivot tables are right here. So we'll do Insert Pivot Table. I'm going to do it from this range that I've selected. So you'll see here, this is the data range that I want. I've already got a worksheet set up, so I want to put this on an existing worksheet. And I want to avoid the logo, so I'm going to put it right here in C5. Hit OK. And there's your pivot table. Now you'll notice right away, nothing really happened. There's just this box here that says there's a pivot table. But what popped up over on the right is all of the fields. So you'll see each one of these fields is one of the columns that we had in the data set. Order, number, quantity. Go over here, order, number, quantity. So it's all of the fields in the data set. And now what this will do is automatically add things up. So let's go back and see tip 1. So how would I produce this without manually moving the work over and copying and pasting it in like I did? Well, here's what we would do. So we want to pull in countries down the left. So I'm going to put in country, and I'm going to make sure country goes to rows. Look at that. Then I want to pull in the years. So we're going to go to year ID, and I'm going to pop that in columns. All right, and then what I want to do is pull in our values. That's, of course, the most important. So we're going to take the MSRP, and a lot of times pivot table will automatically guess where you want to put it. The reason you saw the dates pop in is that it thought they were numbers, so it put it in values. But in this case, it's now realized that we want the MSRP in the values. There's a fourth box up here, right? So we've got columns, rows, and values. This fourth box is filters. That will allow you to filter out. If there's something you want to apply to the entire query, you can just pop it right out. Now, if I go over to row labels, I can also filter by what I've pulled in, right? The filters is for something across the entire query. This lets you kind of just go down. Let's say I don't want to see Spain. Hit OK, and Spain pops right out of the data. I can do the same thing on the columns, and we just pop out, let's say 2005, because we don't like looking at 2005. And there you go. Now, I'm going to do a little bit of tweaking on this to make it usable for our purpose, because I want to recreate the chart on the last page. So first of all, I don't want this grand total because I don't really want to add up across all the years. So there's a lot of options you have in pivot tables. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to pivot table options, totals and filters, and I'm going to take off the grand totals for rows. Okay, that's gone. We're going to keep this clean as we go. Now you'll notice if you try to do a formula like we did on the last page, it's going to do a get pivot table formula. And the challenge with that is it doesn't drag down because it's referencing the original formula you built up here. But there's a really cool way that we can add calculated fields right into the pivot table that will keep updating as we change it. Because the other thing is, if I added that formula on the side, every time I adjust the pivot table, it's not going to know what to do. So to work in detail with the pivot table, we want to go up to Pivot Table Analyze. Make sure that we've highlighted data, and we're going to go to this Fields, Items, and Sets. This is going to allow us to put different calculations in. So you have calculated field and calculated item. A calculated field will compare as many of the variables over here as you want. Calculated item will calculate within something. So we want to calculate within the years because we're going to go 03, 04, 05. So we want to do a calculated item. You'll see what that's done is it's selected year ID and it's going to let us compare the items. So for the first one, I can name it just like I did before. This will be 03 versus 04. And the formula, just a typical Excel formula, will be 2004 minus 2003. We'll go back and we'll do the same thing. We'll do calculated item again. This one is going to be 04 versus 05. And the formula is going to be 2005 minus 2004. And there you go. We've recreated the exact same table we had on the prior page. Except this time, since it's a pivot table, let's say I wanted to just pick a couple random countries, pull those out, hit OK. Everything updates and the calculations automatically move with you. So it's what we saw on the previous page taken to another level because Excel is now doing all of the work. With that, we'll move on to tip 3, and this is building charts and visuals. So there's a really cool way to do that if you're newer to Excel and you don't want to have to decide what chart to build or how to design it. So again, we're going to select our data set here. We're going to go to Insert, and we're going to hit Recommended Charts. So under Charts, there's all of these different options to work with. But if you want Excel to kind of do some of the thinking for you, hit Recommended Charts, and Excel is going to tell you what it thinks is the best option for you. So in this case, it's recommended a clustered column chart where it's going to show every country and how that country is performing. That seems like a really good option. You'll see if you scroll down, it will give you some other options. So you've got some different bar charts here. You've got a chart by country showing the performance. That's better kind of over 1 year. We're not going to use that. I like the current chart we've got a little bit better than this. A lot of different options. So we're going to stick with this original one, which was actually a pretty good choice. Hit OK, and it will automatically create the chart for you. Now, from here, I always like to do a little bit of tweaking. You know, we kind of have our own standards for how these things need to look. You know, I'll come in, I'll delete out the title because I'm going to put it on my PowerPoint slide. Delete some of these rows. But overall, with one click of a button, you've got a really cool visual from Excel. This is a huge way to level up your presentations without a lot of work on your part. And now, I hope you're excited. It's time for that bonus tip I promised. We're going to take the last 2 tips, pivot tables and charts, and put them together in an underused function called a pivot chart. This is really cool, and I'm excited to share this with you. So just like with our pivot table, we're going to go back to our data set. It's still selected because we selected it earlier. We're going to go to Insert, and we're going to go over here to Pivot Chart, and we're going to select Pivot Chart. Just like we did before, we've got the range here. I want it to go on my existing worksheet. For my bonus tip, we're going to put it in C5, just like we did before. So now you'll see you get a pivot table and a pivot chart. You want to pull in the data just like we did before, and then we're going to chart it. So you're taking tip number 2 and 3 and putting them right together. So just like we did before, we're going to pop countries over here. We're going to pop the years into the columns. You'll see it has saved because I've already added those calculated items. It saves those across the workbook, so I don't need to rebuild them, which is really cool. Then we're going to pull in MSRP to the values and look at that. Automatically, we've reproduced our pivot table. The only thing we have to do is we'll pop off the grand total again. We'll go to value field settings. Only thing we have to do is pop off the grand total again. We'll go to pivot table options, totals and filters, and we'll remove the totals for the rows. But all of that work we did before between the pivot table and the chart has all been done automatically for us. But here is the really cool thing. We can pull out things automatically. So let's say that I just wanted to look at 03 and 04, look at the comparison between those two. It tells me I'm looking at the sum of MSRP, and I can pop out countries here, just like I did before. And everything automatically updates, including the chart. You don't have to keep redoing it because the entire chart is right here for you. And you can apply any of these kind of filters to what you want. It will do really anything, and it automatically goes to a recommended chart. Now, let's say you wanted to change the chart type. So this will do the same recommended chart type that we saw previously. But if you wanted to change it because it just wasn't working, you right click, you go to change chart type, and then all of the different options are here for you if Excel didn't get it quite right. This is a really powerful tool to automate building your pivot table and analyzing, and also getting a chart out of it, both of which will kind of update in tandem. So with that, let's recap what we've covered today. First, we covered conditional formatting. This lets you highlight critical data points to make your spreadsheets not just readable, but engaging. We looked at pivot tables, where we summarized vast amounts of data quickly and efficiently, which makes you look like an Excel wizard. Then we created charts. We transformed raw data into compelling stories with well-designed charts. And at the end, we put it all together with our bonus tip, combining the power of pivot tables and charts into pivot charts for dynamic and interactive data visualizations that you can use on the fly. And that's it for today's top tips on data analysis in Excel. If you found this video helpful, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so that you never miss out on our latest videos. We post new videos every Monday. And make sure to drop a comment below on your favorite tip from today's video and how you plan on using it. Remember, finance innovators, we're all in this together. Stay sharp, stay prepared, and keep innovating. Until next time, I'm Mike, signing off from F9 Finance. Cheers.